Do you guys want me to do the good morning thing where you say good morning back to me and then I say that's not loud enough and then you get really upset and like 3 of you leave? We don't have to do that. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification presentation. I am going to run down some basic things here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover what is CMMC. I see a wide range of audience member demographics in here. So I'm assuming some of you are coming to learn about this from a business perspective, how it might impact your business or how it might impact your consulting arms of what you guys do. And then I see some youths in here, which is excellent. We love to see the youths. I love saying that as a 42-year-old man because now I am super old. And I just realized that the other day it dawned on me when someone was doing another introduction at a different conference out in Nebraska. I was just in Nebraska. Very exciting, very flat. That when you say I've got 20 years of experience, that makes me old. So I'm very excited to be a proper old, and hopefully the youths will accept me in this presentation here. So I do see some younger folks in here. One of the things that we'll be talking about is how CMMC can be a career path. So for those of you interested in cybersecurity and cyber auditing, because what 19-year-old isn't, you know, there's a huge career potential here with CMMC. So the model I like to use is what? I will define it for you. So what? How does this impact you? Maybe not you specifically, but the royal you. And then now what? What are you going to do to begin your journey with this, whether you're an organization or you're an individual? There's always time for questions. If I say something and you want to ask a question, just ask a question. It's okay. Or we can do Q&A at the end as well. So what is it? The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. How many of you have heard of this? Oh, all right, I'll take it. I'll take it. So those of you that are here and haven't heard of it, we're going to define it for you really quickly here. The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification is a way for the Department of Defense, Big Daddy DoD, for them to verify that the supply chain that they use is safe from cybersecurity attacks. So, right, the Department of Defense doesn't build anything. There's no factory in the Pentagon. So they rely upon literally hundreds of thousands of organizations to make goods and services. And those goods and services can range from soda for the troops to top secret spy satellites that we're using right now that we don't know anything about. So what we've got here, click, is the way they're doing this is they're now saying that any vendor, anyone who wants to supply goods and services to the Department of Defense has to have an assessed level of cybersecurity resilience. Now that makes sense, right? If you're going to buy something from someone off of Facebook Marketplace, you probably want to do it in like a well-lit parking lot. You maybe don't want to have them come to your home right away. We do this, we vet things in our personal life. Well, up until recently, the Department of Defense has been vetting firms that provide goods and services to them by asking them, are you safe? And then they can respond with yes or no. And that's it. So that's how we've been protecting our supply chain against cybersecurity issues, is by asking companies out there, do you do a good job with cybersecurity? This is like asking who's drunk at a party, right? When the cops show up, the cops are like, okay, who's drunk? Nobody's gonna raise their hand except for like maybe one idiot, right? One guy's like, I guess I am. But nobody's gonna raise their hand. And so we've had a supply chain issue in the United States and abroad when it comes to the defense industrial base. And that is the 350,000 organizations. That is how many active organizations participate in the DoD supply chain. Now this number does not include subcontractors. I don't have that number. Nobody really does. It's in the millions of subcontractors. So this is how many organizations handle what we call FCI, Federal Contract Information, and CUI, Controlled Unclassified Information. So This is what we're dealing with, an audience of 350,000 organizations that are selling something to the DoD. And those things are going into mission critical systems, they're going into jets, they're going into equipment, they're going to the warfighter effort. Now, society is not playing nice right now. As I just joked, our previous way of figuring out whether or not an organization was doing well with cybersecurity was by simply asking them. And that is no longer good enough. Maybe in 2010 we could get away with that and say, hey, do you guys follow NIST 800-171? Yes, we do. Okay, great, here's a contract. But now we have what we call the perfect storm. First and foremost, as I'm sure all of you are aware, we have a huge cybersecurity skills gap. That's probably why some of you have decided to go into cybersecurity from an educational perspective, because there are a lot of jobs out there. 7 out of 10 companies will be negatively impacted by the cybersecurity skills gap. This is the 8th year in a row that it's getting bigger. So there's a lot of jobs out there, or a lot of need for skill out there, and not enough people to do it. So that's a problem, right? If 7 out of 10 businesses are going to be negatively impacted by this, meaning they're going to have a breach or they're going to have to stop operating for some reason, there's 350,000 members of the defense industrial base, and 7 out of 10 of them are going to have cybersecurity issues. That's not great when part of what you're building is going into an F-35 fighter strike platform that then China can come and actually China was contracted to build some of that plane, which was a mistake. But then China can come in and get those plans and then create their exact replica of the F-35, which they've already done. So we've got a skills gap. That's number one. Those of you that are in the audience that are thinking, I'd like to go into cybersecurity, it's a great time for it. Excellent choice. I wish I did that 20 years ago, although the skills gap wasn't so big then. Secondly, we have the Great Resignation. Probably you've all heard of this. It's a term you might be familiar with. Last year, 48 million people in the United States voluntarily left their jobs to go do something else. A chunk of those were high-ranking security professionals because, sorry guys, IT is hard, and poorly run IT organizations can grind people to the bone. So many people in the IT profession decided I would rather go wait tables and probably make a similar amount of money. So we have an already existing cybersecurity skills gap, and we have 48 million people leaving their jobs voluntarily, which has left organizations in dire straits when it comes to cybersecurity. On top of that, we have a little conflict going on in the Crimea area. There was an 800% increase in cybersecurity attacks from Russia to United States-based organizations the day after that war started. The future of war is going to be fought on the internet. And this could be a whole presentation on that. We're not going to get into it. But just believe me that between disinformation and hacking, this is a serious issue that we're all facing. United States organizations, both federally owned and operated and private businesses that participate in the DoD supply chain, are now under constant attack, which means that, of course, we need to be extra careful. On top of that, you have a rise of cyber insurance. I don't know if you guys are familiar with cyber insurance, just like car insurance, right? Companies take out policies. If they get hacked or have to pay a ransomware, the insurance company pays it out. That's growing at a rate of over 25% year over year. More and more businesses are adopting that. And inside of that are a lot of provisions around training and the way we have to treat our employees around cyber resilience. And of course, that brings us all to the CMMC era. We've got all of this stuff going on in the background, and the DoD has recognized this and decided that we need to insulate our supply chain by making sure that every organization that participates in it has some level of assessed cyber resilience. It is no longer good enough to just simply raise your hand and say, I'm doing it, I promise. Now there's going to be some sort of third-party assessment process involved. So last year when I was here, and it was right before they changed this, we were in CMMC 1.0, and CMMC 1.0 was a mess. It was very, very convoluted. As you can see, there were 5 different levels. It required a ton of different assessment protocols. The assessment protocols were independently developed, weren't part of any sort of NIST special publication, which already exists. And so we had these 5 levels of maturity. Your organization could earn a certification for level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and they were all third-party assessment. Now, we've moved to CMMC 2.0, and this is likely going to be the permanent model going forward, at least for the next 5 years. Eventually, of course, they will update it, as the government always does. And sometime before I die, I'm sure we'll be on CMMC 12 or something like that. But CMMC 2.0 is a more simplified version designed to make it a little bit easier for organizations to get on board with this. CMMC 2.0 now has 3 levels. You can either be a level 1 organization, a level 2 organization, or a level 3 organization. And so what that means is that all of those businesses, the 350,000 that are part of the defense industrial base, plus millions of subcontractors out there, will now need to determine whether they are level 1, level 2, or level 3. Now, level 1 is pretty easy. It's designed for entry-level organizations. It has 17 practices. It allows you to do an annual self-assessment, although later on I will tell you why that's not so great. Level 2 now aligns completely with the NIST 800-171, which is something that anyone who does business with the DoD is already familiar with. But it still requires a third-party assessment. So that means that if you want to bid on a level 2 contract, anybody in this room, whatever your business is, you have to have a third-party company come in and review 110 of your cybersecurity practices and all of the documentation surrounding them. And you must be compliant with all of that, or you will no longer be eligible to bid on those contracts. Level 3, most people in here will probably never get to level 3. These are the really big dogs in the room, you know, the General Dynamics and stuff like that. But level 3 is going to require a third-party assessment and a third-party assessment. So it requires 2 third-party assessments, one from a private organization and one from the DIBCAC, if you're familiar with them. If you're not, you don't need to be. It's okay. So CMMC 2.0, it's simpler. As I'm staring out into the room, when I say it's simpler, I see the glazed over look in some of your eyes and you're thinking, this is simple. Well, this is simpler than CMMC 1.0. So we'll go through what all of this means, both from a business perspective and then how you could make a career out of understanding these 3 things. Now, one of the great things, if you've ever heard of the term POAM, or waivers, is CMMC 2.0 now at least allows for a plan of action and milestones when it comes to being assessed. One of the biggest challenges that most small organizations face is that if I were to go into a small business and do a cybersecurity assessment, I'm going to find flaws. And your response to that is going to be, well, I can fix it. I need 30 days, I need 60 days, I need 180 days to fix it. In the previous CMMC model, I would have told you to kick rocks and I would have failed you. Now, when it comes to POAMs, they're allowed. So small businesses are in a better shape to participate in this, which is good because the defense industrial base needs small businesses in order to function properly. I won't dwell on this too much. If you have questions about what's going on with POAMs or waivers, you can ask them at the end. This isn't sexy, I know, but it's there. Now here's our current timeline. Look at this. That was like a week ago. I know, right? Just like a week ago. So the CMMC first exam is now published. That means that anybody in here can become a CMMC certified professional. What does that do for you? Makes you lots of money? Probably. I'll tell you all about what CMMC CCP is going to do for you. But this timeline is now done with. We are now launched with that exam. There's one other certification coming, and it's coming in December. And that is going live as well. We've actually submitted our courseware for that. So this is good. All of this is live now. All right, so what? I know this is the glazed over part because I've just thrown a lot of words at you. So what? What does this matter, right? So here's a question for everybody out there. This is rhetorical. You don't actually need to answer this. If you are part of one of the following, if you are one of the 350,000 organizations plus millions of subcontractors who want to bid on a federal contract sometime in the next 5 years, this is going to impact you. So even if you're not bidding right now, if you've ever thought to yourself, man, I'd love to get one of them juicy DoD contracts. It's like $28 million to produce 10 chairs. Awesome. If you've ever thought about being one of those companies, you will have to engage with this. If you are one of those companies and you are currently actively bidding on contracts and you're in IT or a cybersecurity professional, you're in compliance, you're a legal or contract compliance professional, or you're in management, understanding this will be paramount for your business's success moving forward. If you want to be a cybersecurity or just a general technology consultant, there are so many organizations out there right now looking for help with this. As I stand here trying to describe something incredibly complex to a room full of about 40 people, half of which are looking at me like I'm speaking in a different language, you can imagine that every Joe and Sally who runs a company that has anything to do with this is sitting at home trying to figure this out, looking through books, Googling it, coming up with all these crazy answers. They're going to need people to help them. As a matter of fact, this is the biggest hurdle right now to the full implementation of this is that there aren't enough people to help organizations get ready for this. If you want to get a federal job, you're going to have to deal with this. And finally, what's really cool about this, and the whole point of this show, Unlocking Your Potential, is that this can be a career, believe it or not. Think about 150,000 organizations that are going to need assessment, and they're going to need it done quickly. So how many assessors do you think there should be? Anyone have a guess? If I have to get through 150,000 organizations, just that, how many do we think we need? 12? 12 people? That's about how many we have, right? So how long do you think it would take 12 people to conduct 3-month audits on 150,000 organizations? It's a lot of time, right? We're never going to get through this. This is never going to become a reality unless we have thousands and thousands and thousands of assessment professionals who are participating in this whole infrastructure, that are going out and assessing organizations. So for the youths in here, between the TikTok on your phone and the studies that you're doing, this is a truly life-changing career opportunity for some of you, especially if you have the mindset of an assessment or an auditor. This is something that can absolutely change your career trajectory right now, because there are just simply not enough assessment professionals out there. And that certification is coming in December, which means that anyone in this room could be a certified assessment professional come 2023 and start working with organizations out there called C3PAOs. I'll explain what those are in a minute, to grow your career. That's how much the DoD spends a year. In case you were wondering why this is so important, the DoD spends $1 trillion a year. Yes, it's a trillion with a T. It's not a billion with a B. It's $1 trillion. It's more than Jeff Bezos has. That's more than Elon Musk has. So that's a lot of money, because those are the only two people besides the DoD that have money. So $1 trillion a year is at stake. And that's why those contracts are so big. I don't know if you've ever seen a federal contract before from the DoD, but they are so stuffed with delicious, good money. I mean, they are $27, $30 million on average for a contract. The company I work for, Logical Operations, we publish courseware that goes across the globe, that's used in learning exercises, for over 3,000 different training organizations. We're a $20 million a year company. One DoD contract could double our size if for some reason the DoD wanted to throw like books at bad guys. We could provide enough books to do that. But one DoD contract can absolutely explode an organization. Where I'm from in Rochester, we have a company called L3Harris. They're an engineering company, but they have gotten in on the government contract. They make radios. And so like if you're thinking like walkie-talkies, like who needs a walkie-talkie? Well, the federal government does. And Harris is now a huge company because of all the contracts that they've gotten from there. So you've got $1 trillion worth of spend out there. The DoD supply chain is global, believe it or not, including locations in China, which is probably a mistake, but I think they're working on that. So whether you want to work here in the United States or whether you actually wanted to travel overseas, there are so many companies out there that participate in this supply chain and make money. And I'm sure that there's a ton, there's obviously a ton in New York, there's a ton in Maryland, there's some in West Virginia, there's a million down in the DC area, of course. So all in Pennsylvania as well, all in this area, there are tons of different organizations that participate in the government supply chain. Now, previously, if you're a business that's in here, these are the 3 questions you would have to answer. This is it. Can you make it? We need glass for a cockpit. We're a glass manufacturing company. We can make it. We can make it up to your standards. Excellent. Okay, what's your price? Cheaper than the other guy. Okay, great. That's what we like to hear. And then can you scale? Yes, I can make 10. I can make 100. I can make 1,000. We need 10 million. Yeah, I guess I can do that. I'll bring in everybody for some overtime. So if you can answer these 3 questions, you can bid on a federal contract. That's it. So you guys right here, our student collective, if you wanted to form a little LLC, if you could answer these questions affirmatively, you could get yourself a nice, juicy government contract. And if you've ever watched the movie War Dogs about with Miles Teller and Jonah Hill in it, that's the whole point of that movie, was 2 guys who decided to become arms dealers. And that's real. That actually happened. And that's all they did. Can you make it? What's your price? Can you scale? If you can answer those 3 things, you can participate and get lots of money. But now, you're going to need to answer a 4th question. What CMMC level are you? And the only way to answer that is to either do an intensive self-assessment and be on the hook if you're wrong, or have a third-party person come into your business to look at your IT practices. Now, those of you that are working here in the IT space, how much would you love that scene from Office Space where you have the third-party consultants come in and tell you everything you're doing right and wrong in your IT infrastructure? Is that something that everyone here is excited about? You guys want that? No, that's cool, right? That's what we want. We want someone who doesn't know our business coming in and critically analyzing everything that we do on a day-to-day basis and reminding us that we didn't document that one thing that we did last Thursday. Of course not. Nobody wants that. So this is now the new challenge for every organization out there. Now, for some organizations, it's going to be fairly simple. Let's say we've got Dave and Bob's Garden Supply and Lawn Mowing Services. And for the last 30 years, they've held a contract. They're up in Massachusetts. They mow, they do all the gardening on Hanscom Air Force Base, right? That's what they do. And that contract pays about 80% of their annual revenue. It's just Dave and Bob. They've probably got a couple of high school kids who occasionally do some other stuff for them. Their IT is Office 365. That's what they use for their IT services. And all of a sudden, now they're being told that they have to self-assess on 17 different IT practices. Now, I've painted a small picture of Dave and Bob. You've all figured out Dave and Bob in your head. And you're saying to yourself, how are Dave and Bob, who mow lawns for a living, who use Office 365 as their sole source of IT support, how are they going to do any of this? And if you're asking that question, that's the right question to answer. Because now Dave and Bob, who rely on these federal contracts, will no longer be eligible to bid on them if they do not have an assessed CMMC level. So what are they going to do? What's that?
It's 800-171-R2. There's 111 checks.
Yep.
Right there.
That's the new one, right? Is that the second one?
Yeah, R2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I spent a whole bunch of time playing with 853. So.
There's a lot that needs to be considered. Now, for small organizations, they've only got 17. It's the larger organizations that have to follow the 800, 171, and then the bigger ones that have to follow the 172. But even 17 assess cybersecurity practices. Think about most small businesses. Do they have IT staff? Some of them do. Some of them just look like me, right? Just like a guy who probably like hands somebody a laptop and says, you're good to go. And then when that laptop breaks, I just hand them a new laptop. That's my whole job. I probably get $160,000 a year for that, but but more than likely they outsource their IT. It's going to some conglomerate company, which may or may not be compliant with CMMC. This is a huge infrastructural challenge for many small organizations. Now, if you're talking about like secret spy satellite stuff, those are going to be level 2 and level 3 organizations. They, of course, have more resources to throw at this problem. But again, even an organization like Boeing, right, or General Dynamics, or some of the big players that are in the space, if they are not properly assessed at the right CMMC level, they will no longer be eligible to bid on the contracts. And as I've explained over and over again, there's a lot of money. There's $1 trillion at stake here. Now, for Dave and Bob, that $2 million contract is 80% of their revenue. That sends their kids to school. That keeps their wives happy. That means they have those nice houses, those new construction houses that you drive by and you're like, I wonder who lives there. It's Dave and Bob, who own the garden supply shop that does the lawn mowing at Hanscom Air Force Base. Level 3 organizations are really going to struggle with this too because they need to have multiple assessments done. It becomes a huge process. If any of you have ever worked at a big company and you start thinking about your IT documentation, you probably get that queasy pit in your stomach and you're like, oh, what a mess. That's the problem we're trying to address. So these organizations, most of the level 1 organizations will be handling what's called FCI, it's federal contract information. Level 2 organizations will handle CUI and FCI, controlled unclassified information and federal contract information. As you can see, level 1 has 17 things they need to do. So Dave and Bob are now going to have to figure out, what are these 17 things? Do we do them? Does our only IT support, Microsoft Office 365, do it? What do we do if we don't do these? And what happens if I say we're doing them and somehow, some way we get hacked? They go to prison. I'm just spoiling it for you. They go to federal prison. Not like a nice, well, maybe a nice prison, but like federal prison. So level 2, 110 practices. Those of you that are out in the working IT world, I want you to think about documenting and understanding 110 different practices that are currently going on in your IT infrastructure with your team and making sure that all of that documentation is correct. You're going to need help with this. That's just the simple solution. Level 3 organizations have 110 plus. Those are based on 800-171 and 800-172, and they will require a third-party assessment by what's called the DIBCAC, which if you're ever getting assessed by the DIBCAC, you've probably done something wrong. So now what? What's the solution? What are we going to do about this? How does this impact you guys? That's really what's important here. Man. So my daughter just patted the microphone. I'm such a bad host. My daughter, like 3 weeks ago, came home from school with the plague because it's RSV season. For those of you that have kids, you understand that. The rest of you are like, what is he talking about? So my daughter comes home. She's 4. And she's got a cough, and then the next thing you know, I have a cough, and then my wife has a cough, then my mom has a cough, and then like the whole neighborhood block has a cough because RSV spreads faster than anything I've ever seen. And man, it has taken like 3 weeks to get over it. It is a mess right now. So if any of you have kids, stay away from them. That's a long way of me saying don't hug your children. I'm just kidding. So first things first, I want you to understand that this is a whole ecosystem. I know I look like just like a guy, but I'm not making this up. This comes from somewhere. The Department of Defense has set up what's called the CMMCAB.org, the transition to become the CyberAB.org, which is a nonprofit organization that's responsible for the development and handling of all of the certification processes that go on. So the DoD directed them to create a way to certify organizations, to go out and say, you're a business, you're level 1, you're a business, you're level 2, you're a business, you're level 3. They did that by creating a bunch of really annoying acronyms, such as C3PAO. Now, as a Star Wars fan, it becomes very challenging for me to continue to say C3PAO because what I want to say is C3PO. And I've said that several times and been harshly corrected by members of the audience. So I worked very hard to slowly say C3PAO, a CMMC third-party assessment organizations. So the Cyber AB oversees all of the CMMC third-party assessment organizations. These are the businesses that go out and assess the members of the defense industrial base. How many of those do you think we've got? Somebody shout a number.
2.
You guys are not far from, you're real close. There's like 6 or 7, I think, yeah. So 350,000 organizations, 1 million subcontractors, at least, right? And 7 businesses responsible for taking the 12 assessors that currently exist out into this ecosystem. So by my calculations, we're going to be done with this about the time of the inevitable heat death of the universe. That's about the time that we will finish assessing all these organizations, just in time for entropy to stop, I think is where we're going to be. That was a science joke. A couple of you laughed. I feel real good about that. That's new. I just came up with that right now. I'm a big space nerd, so thanks for some of you for coming along. I really appreciate that. If you want to learn more about entropy, I suggest Googling the arrow of time. It's a really interesting subject. Anyways, so we've got these CMMC third-party assessment organizations, and what I love is that I hope I'm looking out at the faces of future employees of some of these C3PAOs. Because please, we need you, right? We can't do this without some of you. So if you've ever wanted to do checklists for a living but make a lot of money, then that is an organization you could work for. These are the businesses that do the assessing. You've got licensed training providers. There's currently about 60 of them. They're offering training for organizations to get prepared for this. They're also offering the training for people who want to do the assessments and become assessors. So there's about 60 of those currently. There's some that are local to this area. The biggest one that's really close to here is Learning Tree. They're down in like Reston. So what's that, like 3 hours from here? So there's a lot of them. They're global. There's licensed partner publishers, of which there are only 20. That's where I come from. My company writes materials on this to help businesses and individuals train and understand this. There's currently 3 in the world that have authorized courseware. One of them is me, so not me, but me. So that's where we fit in. And then there's Registered Practitioner Organization, which I'm from Rochester, New York, so RPO is the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra to me. And I don't understand what this name means, but I can tell you what they do. They're consultants. I don't know why they just didn't name them consultants, but Registered Practitioner Organizations, they are the consultancy arm of this ecosystem. They go out and they go to a business and they say, ooh, you're bad. You know, you need us to come in and help you fix these things before an assessor comes in. Which, by the way, is a whole other career path, again, that you can consider. So who are you? Are you a business? I see some businesses in front of me. Some of you look very professional. You're probably representing some businesses. Or are you a people? If you're a people, which I see some people in front of me, then you might be an individual who's interested in this. So from a business perspective, if you're an organization that wants to get a level 1, you can do 2 things. You can either do an annual self-assessment, or you can have an assessor come in and assess you for 3 years. So Dave and Bob's Garden Supply Shop and Lawn Mowing Services up near Hanscom Air Force Base in Lexington, Massachusetts can choose to raise their hand and say, we're doing a good job at cybersecurity, please give us money. Or they can say, please, young person from the Tech the Gap conference, come into my business and tell me if I'm doing a good job, and then give me an assigned level so I only have to do this every 3 years. If Dave and Bob, and we're going to pin this primarily on Dave because I think Dave is the more cavalier of the two owners of that. If Dave were to say, we're doing a good job, and then it turns out that Dave fibbed a little bit and that they weren't actually practicing these 17 different cybersecurity controls, if they get hacked, he can be brought in front of the Department of Justice under the False Claims Act. And that can include massive fines and up to 5 years in federal prison. This is new. A decade ago, you could lie and get caught and get slapped on the wrist, and then lie again and get caught and get slapped on the wrist. This was just the way it worked. Now they're saying no more lying, you go to prison if you lie. Now, I don't think Dave is gonna do real well in jail. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I just don't think that that's Dave's thing. I'm not prepared. Dave is not prepared to go to prison. So what's really good for a lot of organizations out there is that instead of raising their hand and saying, I'm doing a good job, they can take the responsibility off their own shoulders, have a third party person come in, perhaps one of you, and you guys can come in and say, Dave, Bob, you're doing a great job. 3 years now, you're certified. Go ahead and bid on those contracts. Keep your wife happy. Make sure your kids keep going to that private school. You can take that third Disney vacation, get the fast pass. You know who I'm talking about. You're on social media, you know who I'm talking about. Now, if I'm a level 1 organization, I'm gonna do a couple of things. The first thing I'm gonna do is, and this is again for the businesses that are out there, I'm gonna probably put at least one person through CMMC training. Whether I care if they get the certification or not, I really don't. I want at least one person in my business to understand this. Go take a class, come back with the knowledge of what the assessment is gonna look like and help us get ready for it. I might also, depending on my positioning in the space, I might also look at end user awareness training. If you're familiar with what that term means, it just means that anyone who touches a computer should have some sort of, don't click on that email, don't go to that website. If someone calls and says they're from Facebook, they're probably not. Facebook isn't calling you. Don't give them your password type of training. That is actually built, end user awareness training is built into NIST 800-171, section 3.2.1. So that's something I would consider for any organization out there that wants to be level 1. Dave and Bob should do that. That's what they should do. They should get their couple of high school employees, some basic cyber resilience, and then Dave or Bob should probably take some sort of CMMC training so that way they have the knowledge to either self-assess or work with an assessor who's coming in. If you're a level 2 organization, that means you're probably a little bit bigger. You're dealing with contracts that have FCI and CUI in it. And so you're gonna wanna get any of your decision makers, your auditors, your IT leaders prepared. So you contact a licensed training provider, send a couple of them to a class. You're gonna wanna execute on some end user awareness training because again, that's built into NIST 800-171. So that is part of this. You're gonna wanna get your IT staff probably some certifications. It's been shown that the few assessors who do exist look more favorably on candidates that possess certifications like Security Plus, anything on the DoD 8570, 8140. They look a little bit more favorably on. So your assessment gets a little bit shorter. For those of you that have ever undergone an assessment, your assessment is shorter is the best words you will ever hear. So level 2 organizations have a little bit more work to do. I would get some people trained in a lot of different things, and I would work on your IT department. Make sure that those folks are trained specifically in incident response. If you're an app development shop, look into any sort of secure coding type training that's out there. Now, if you're a people, right? If you're a person who's attending this training, thankfully there's a few of you, this is your certification path. This is really simple. This cannot be more simple of a pathway to cash, okay? First, you're gonna go out and you're gonna find a licensed training provider. It's really easy to do. I'll tell you how to do it in a second. You find a licensed training provider. You say, I would like to take a CMMC CCP class. That licensed training provider is gonna use courseware from somebody like me or one of my competitors out there, and they're going to have a certified instructor. You're going to take a 5-day class. It might not actually be 5 days, it might be 10 days, it might be 15 days, but it's about 40 hours worth of content. When you are done, you're going to study for your exam. You're going to go sit for your CCP exam. You're going to get that certification. At that point, you are eligible to take an assessment certification, which comes out in December. And at that point, you are then eligible to be a CMMC assessor. And I've only got 12 now. So if you're number 13, that's big bucks for you. If you're number 13,085, it might not be as well paying. So this is something, the earlier you can get into, the better. It's a great career choice for anyone who's interested in cybersecurity auditing. I've never said those words and really believe that people are interested in that, but I'm sure that somebody has got to be thinking to yourself, man, I can't wait to go audit some stuff. So I mean, there's at least one person in this room that's like real quiet right now, but it's like, yeah, I can't wait. So that's it. So this is a website. I'm sure some of you have been on the World Wide Web before. They have these things called websites where you can, be interested in topics and whatnot. I often go to one about a popular video game. It's called Destiny that I like to play because I'm a big nerd. So, but this is our website, cmmclpp.com. There is my email address should you have any questions on this topic. This is a complicated thing that no amount of 40 minutes will ever be able to truly explain. However, there's a simple path. If you are a business and this is going to impact you, all right, find a training provider and have somebody go through some training. All right, this is the same concept as HIPAA, it's the same concept as OSHA, it's the same concept as any federally mandated auditing or training that you have to do. It's always best to have someone in your business who understands it that can help internally. If you're a student and you want to unlock your potential, right? You see what I did there? I said the name of the movie. If you want to unlock your potential, this is an excellent career choice if you are of the mindset that auditing is fun. This sounds like my personal hell because I am the least fastidious, I am the least organized human being on the planet. My wife would be excellent at this. I would be terrible at it. So if you've got the personality type for auditing, this is an absolutely brand new career field that's out there. Cybersecurity maturity models are exploding. So beyond the DoD, there is a like $78 million proposal that just passed, or maybe it's $780 million, to train small businesses that are not part of the defense industrial base in cybersecurity maturity models. So this is something that organizations are looking to adopt. If you're saying to yourself, what if I want to work at Best Buy corporate and do this? Don't knock it. I worked at Best Buy a long time ago. This will trickle down into the private sector as well. Maybe not at the full scale of this, but this concept of protecting our organizations through cyber resilience training just has to, because too many businesses are getting hacked. I can't open Reddit without seeing another organization lost their data on the dark web, or my credit card information is out there. Good luck, they're all full. So, well, you think I get paid to do this? Absolutely not. And that's it. So if anybody has any questions.